Good evening. Welcome to the October 9th meeting of the City of Lake Forest Plan Commission. I am Michael Lay, the chairman of the commission. I'd like to introduce the other members of the commission who are here this evening. To my far left, Commissioner Kuchman, and to my left is Commissioner Ziccarelli. To my far right is Commissioner Berg, then Commissioner Anderson, and to my immediate right, Commissioner Culbertson. Our first item is approval of our meeting minutes. They have not been finished yet. They're in process, so we'll hold those over until probably our next meeting. Our main item on the agenda this evening is an informational presentation of the Northwestern Lake Forest Hospital located on Westmoreland Road. This meeting, I would emphasize, is for informational purposes only. There will be no votes taken, no action taken on this item this evening. We'll outline what the procedure will be from here further on in the meeting. What I would like to suggest we do here is first have a brief presentation, introductory presentation from our Community Development Director, Kathy Zerniak. And then secondly, I'd like to have the hospital representatives who are here come up and make their presentation. I expect that'll probably take a half hour or so. And then thereafter, I'd like to have Commissioner Ziccarelli, who is a member of the Technical Advisory Committee, give a report to the commission and those who are here in terms of what's been going on, in terms of the detailed work that advisory body has been considering. And then I would like to have anybody here from the public make comments or testify. And then after that, then I'd suggest that commissioners, if they have questions of either of Kathy or the hospital representatives or Augie, as a member of the Technical Advisory Committee, we hold questions until that time. Okay? Kathy?
Thank you, Chairman Lay, members of the Commission. Just a little bit of a process review. In September 2011, the hospital first came before the Plan Commission. I believe several of you were on the commission at that time and provided an informational presentation as a start to the master planning process. The Plan Commission worked through that process. It took a series of 5 meetings. And in May of 2012, the Plan Commission completed its work and forwarded a recommendation to the City Council in support of the hospital, the new master plan for the revitalization of Northwestern Lake Forest Hospital. The City Council then considered that master plan, also considered a special use permit ordinance that was developed as the approving document for that master plan, and after several meetings, the City Council unanimously approved the hospital master plan as well as the special use permit. Those documents established a framework. It was acknowledged that a master plan does not go into detail, but instead gives the authorization for the project to move forward, approves the use, and establishes a framework, in this case, a pretty detailed framework of how the project was expected to develop over time. One of the recommendations from the Plan Commission during the master plan discussion was because of the importance of this project and the magnitude of this project, being the largest project that will ever be constructed in Lake Forest, the Plan Commission suggested that the city think of some way to stay in touch with the hospital team after approval of the master plan and before presentation of detailed plans. So at the Plan Commission's recommendation, the City Council approved the appointment of the City Manager's Hospital Advisory Committee. That committee is a working group. It is not a public body, neither appointed nor elected, doesn't have any approval authority, but that group has really been in the trenches meeting with the hospital project team for a number of months. And Chairman Lay, as you noted, Commissioner Ziccarelli has been part of that committee and will provide more information on that. The reason this project is back before you tonight is because we are at a point in the process where the advisory committee is wrapping up their work, and it seemed appropriate to begin the discussion with the Plan Commission by coming back, introducing the project, reminding you what has occurred to date, and introducing the detailed plans as they've been developed so far. There is still more work to do. Ordinarily, with a project at this point, we wouldn't expect to have detailed landscape plans, detailed architectural drawings, and we don't. But that is not inappropriate. I think it is fair to say that the advisory committee has been very pleased with the process and feels very good about moving this forward to you. Again, the advisory committee has not yet finished their work, but this is the start of the Plan Commission's review. And just to clarify what you're doing, the Plan Commission is really, you are not relooking at the master plan, you are not amending the special use permit, but much like you recently did with Woodlands Academy, you are checking back to make sure that now that the detailed plans are available, that they are consistent with the framework established in the master plan. And the advisory committee will be the recommending body that helps you do that. That concludes my comments, and you can invite the presentation.
Thank you, Kathy. Call upon the Northwestern Lake Forest Hospital representatives who are here. Please come forward.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Tom McAfee. I'm the hospital president, and I am very much delighted to be back here again this evening with you to really share some exciting information about the project as it's evolved. You know, we've spent quite a bit of time over the last few years, and in fact, I think we've had more than 25 meetings collectively between the various parties, and are really pleased with the progress. In fact, we just had a meeting last week where we invited the neighbors to come and have a first glimpse at the images that you'll see this evening, as well as the model. And it was kind of fun to see some of the response, because I think that we've had overwhelming response. That's, you know, the reference before was a purple block that sat in the middle of the campus, because of course we needed to do a lot of work to advance beyond the land use plan. So I think that what you'll see this evening is a response to the feedback. I think we've hired a spectacular architectural team. We brought in world-renowned architects and partnered them with experts on internal flow, and collectively they spent an enormous amount of time engaging the community and understanding the key issues, and I think it'll be clearly evident to you that they've made solid progress. I'd also like to thank Kathy Cerniak and the city for their continued guidance throughout this process. It's enormously complex. It's very important to our community, and their leadership and guidance has been instrumental in our success to date. I also think that it's worth calling out that we've already begun to advance commitments that we made early in the process with the improvements on Route 41. In fact, that work is well underway, and we hope to have the new access off of Route 41 operational before the end of November, which we think will absolutely help alleviate some of the congestion that exists today on the adjacent roads. With that, what I'd like to do is briefly introduce some of our architects that have been working on the project to date. First with Mark Shoemaker, who is a principal with Pelly Clark Pelly, a world-renowned architectural firm that is based in New Haven, Connecticut, and has designed award-winning buildings from the World Financial Center in New York to the Petronas Towers in Malaysia and International Finance Center in Hong Kong. Mark designed renowned hospitals and medical research institutions, including Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, the Cleveland Clinic, the Mayo Clinic, and among others. His academic background includes the Georgia Institute of Technology, the University of Pennsylvania, and he is a faculty member at the Pratt Institute and lectures at MIT and the University of Pennsylvania. He is joined this evening with Tom Osland, who is a leading landscape design architect in the country. He was trained at Harvard and has served as a faculty member at Harvard Graduate School of Design, Washington University, Ohio State University, the University of Illinois, the Institute of Technology, just to name a few. He's an award-winning landscape architect known for creating engaging public landscapes for universities, hospitals, museums, parks, and is the winner of the prestigious Rome Prize Fellowship from the American Academy in Rome. Mark and Tom will now give an overview of the hospital project, and I think that our goal of creating a true landmark for our community is well along its path. So with that, gentlemen.
Good evening. I'm Mark Shoemaker once again, principal with Pelley Clark Pelley. And we're very excited to be here, and we've been very excited to work on this very important project in this wonderful community, and we put our heart and soul into this. We're going to show you a bit of an overview of where we are right now. It's been clear from the beginning of this process that this is as much a site design issue as much as a building design issue, and we've treated it in equal measure as we've moved through the process, and that's why Tom is here and he's going to share in the presentation with me. We've gone to great lengths to integrate both the building and the site with all its various aspects as we move forward with the design. And at the same time, obviously keeping in mind Northwestern's mission to create this health and wellness campus with a great deal of civic engagement, and with some general aspirational goals as we started the project and developed the design. Of course, this is the campus as it exists today. We're talking about development of the hospital in the center part of the campus, with the existing campus now being into the south, with the health and fitness and daycare in the north. Now, as we have begun to work on it, this is the vision that we see starting to emerge as we take into account all the issues about the site, and from the very beginning we've been very sensitive to the height of the building. We know that's an issue for the neighbors, as well as stormwater management, wetlands, also looking to move the traffic flow from the south, from the Deerpath end of the campus, more to the north, and that's certainly helped by the beginning work at the exit off of 41. And as you can see, starting to create a building design which is essentially 3 stories tall, and this came after an extensive analysis of the needs of the hospital, patient flow, safety, among the key issues. And looking at the program carefully in terms of the adjacencies, we were able to develop a footprint and a plan for the building, as you can see in this slide and also on the model, that essentially takes what was the master plan at 5 down to 3 with a mechanical penthouse on top of a series of pavilions. So it's not one massive building, it's a series of pavilions on a podium base. And as you can see, we've migrated the building more to the eastern end of the campus in an effort, frankly, to link the north and south parts of the campus, leaving more area free, and also to pull the building away from our neighbors. Likewise, we have taken the stormwater storage issue, and instead of just relegating it to some area on the site, we've chosen to engage it with the building and couple it with a reflecting portion of it as well, a reflecting pool, to create a feature and a focus for the development on the east side of the campus. We've also taken great care, as I mentioned earlier, the idea of creating access to this building more from Waukegan and from exit 41. And as you can see here, and we'll go into it in greater detail, the main entrance is here. So really the front door of the campus has really shifted to the north. And we've done everything possible to make that very clear and to make this plan as intuitive and as clear as possible for patients and visitors as you approach the building. So with that brief introduction, let me hand this off to Tom, and he'll go into a little greater detail on the site, and then I'll return and talk a little bit about the 3-dimensional aspects of the building and how it sits on the site.
Chairman Lay, fellow commissioners, I'm Tom Osland, landscape architect working on the design team. And I think, as Mark mentioned, we began the project with a real serious goal of creating a connection between, a real symbiotic connection between the architecture and the site, knowing where it is in Lake Forest. With that, we began sort of looking at the positioning and what the site was sort of telling us in terms of drainage patterns, vegetation patterns, and looking at creating some kind of a feature element that the buildings, or as we refer to them as pavilions, can sort of are shaped around. We've created a water body that's a little over 6.5 acres as a way to create that image. Mark had mentioned this is the 41 entrance into the campus from the north. From the west, the northwest, we have the access off of Waukegan along Westmoreland, and the main entrance into the hospital is an access drive that brings you into what we're calling the feature as the common, a space that is actually flexible open space, sort of twice the size or 2.5 times the size of Market Square in downtown Lake Forest. And the main entrance to the hospital is here as you're received off of that connecting road. There is an access road that comes off of Waukegan further to the south, and that brings you into some of the service areas and the emergency area as well. We have looked at a way in which we know the sensitivity of our neighbors to the west and to the south, and by using grading and topography and plant material, we've been able to create a series of berms, or as we're calling them, drumlins, that provide that sheltering, some 25 feet tall, as they sort of front along Waukegan. And to the south, there is a berm along Lane Lorraine that we're actually adding onto. We're using all the existing vegetation that's along that face, and we're adding more berming to that along with more vegetation to make that a stronger edge and screening from the Lane Lorraine neighborhood. We've also, in parking lot 12, which actually extended into the 200-foot buffer that is along the southern edge, we've actually removed parking there and displaced it into the southern lots. As you can see here, a majority of the parking is to the north and to the west, where we've taken a real sustainable approach to water management by using pervious pavers in the drive lanes of that lot, and actually creating the ability, this is a drainage train or wet meadow that actually wraps around the entire facility and gets to the detention area. And then there is a separate system that's actually a reflecting pond that affronts the eastern facades of the building as one approaches them. So we have located roughly about 1,236 cars across the campus. As Mark mentioned, we've made this desire to make the connection from north to south so that the campus is it's a continuum of pedestrian and vehicular movement around the campus. If we go to the next slide, this is the sort of open space slide where we're looking at a total open space percentage of about 72.1% of the campus. We have within that, the central campus alone is 68.5% open space. So we have taken very seriously the idea of it being a campus and a symbiotic relationship between the landscape and the architecture. When we look at these different landscape typologies as we've broken up the site, it's a big site, 160 plus acre site. We've looked at how we handle the buffer areas, and I mentioned those berming and that vegetation. how we actually handle the open space in between there, which is an ag field at present. We have the wet meadow that helps us with that filtering of the water as it's moving across the site. We have the bioswales in the parking lots that also add to that water treatment before it gets down to our detention area. We have the common space, which is the blue color, and we have the retention pond and reflecting pond at the far east end. These are some quick site sections that move you through the site, and we're looking at a section that provides, again, that berming along Waukegan as you move through the middle of the site to the elevation of the building, and then really trying to utilize that topography that existed to seam that building together. And you'll see some images later where I think we've achieved that quite handsomely. This is the site sections along the buffers to the residences. So we have to the north, this first section, you get a section that sort of looks like that, where we're utilizing some existing topography. We've got the buffers going off of Waukegan Road, which, as I mentioned, those berms get to be close to 25 feet high, and then the Lane Lorraine sections. One of the goals that we've had is actually using the outreach of the bicycle and pedestrian paths that exist on campus, but even bigger than that within the region. You know, to the west we have the Savannah Trail, and to the south we have the Skokie Bike Trail, which we used as fodder for looking at our systems to make that connection. In the master plan, the bike master plan for Lake Forest, we know that the hospital has been one of the kind of connector pieces. And so we have done that with these proposed walking paths along with these fitness paths, and then the connecting bike trails that go to the west to the Savannah, and then back down to the south and to the east down to the Skokie Valley Trail. These are to show you quick hints of wayfinding. It's a family of signage that is being studied at present. And I just wanted to introduce you to that we're thinking about that at this point. And I think I'm going to give it back to Mark.
So focusing a bit on the building and how it relates to the site issues. With this first slide, just wanted to start off with describing the height of the building in greater detail. We are talking about a building, as I said, that is 3 stories tall. In total, it's 60 feet high, measured from the appropriate measuring point within the site, with a shielded mechanical penthouse on top of that, about 15 feet, so a total of 75. But the real bulk of the building will be perceived as a 3-story building at 60. And as I mentioned to you before, it's a series of pavilions that are perpendicular to a podium base. So there's great space between these buildings. It's really a village of forms, including the entry pavilion, to create the proper scale, as you'll see in some of the renderings I'm going to show you. We've taken great pains to look at the project from a number of vantage points, once again sensitive to our neighbors and what the views would be of this building. So we have, as you can see, this is one of many sheets that we've done in terms of looking at the building as it sits in the landscape with all the site issues and improvements that we talked about. And let me just run through these, and you can see how this building fits into and nestles into the landscape. This is taken from the Green Bay neighborhood, and we physically had to put the arrow into the shot for you to understand where the building is. At the three-story level, it is very, very tight to the horizon line. It will be quite masked, I think, by all the trees and the terrain between the Green Bay neighborhood and the campus. As you move to a Lane Lorraine vantage point, you can see the building is a little bit above that berm. Of course, this is a still shot, and we purposely cleared the trees out just so we could show the real relationship of the roof line to the building. But of course, I think for the most part, this will be also quite invisible from that southern neighborhood. This is taken from Waukegan. This is taken from the new access drive. So of course, this is where the building starts to be more visible as you approach it on the campus. And you can see the 3 stories as represented in each one of the pavilions and the mechanical penthouses that will be on top. And once again, those are shielded, architecturally developed and enclosed objects. And here we are moving up Westmoreland. Here the trees and the berms are clearing. You're starting to get closer to the campus, and you start to see the building, of course. And then as you start to line up on the entry road to the main entrance, which is this pavilion here, you start to understand the plan and the length and breadth of the project. And then as you get closer, this is the main entrance. It's a fairly smallish and purposely so entrance, but appropriate to the scale of the rest of the building to create this front door. Great visibility into the lobby, to the front desk, and this actually will have a vista all the way to the lake internally as you move through that front door. And we're treating the entry pavilion and its paving very much like a drivable plaza. The idea is to create a very warm, friendly, engaging front door for the project. And then as you move to the lakeside, as Tom mentioned, the water, the 2 basins as part of the lake, we envision this waterfall between the 2 to create movement, aeration, and some sound. And this is where the project opens up a bit more. This is facing 41 on the east side. You can see that the circulation spine, which is on this side that links all the pavilions, is exposed at the ground level. And there's a series of pavilions with some special spaces in each one of those pavilions, enjoying the overall view of the lake and the view to the east. You'll also see, in terms of the character of the building, we're borrowing and embracing ideas from prairie-style architecture to further emphasize the horizontality and the closeness to the land as much as possible. Those sunscreens are also functional in terms of sunscreening some of the major public spaces and the patient rooms. And as you can see in this last slide, which is a nighttime view, they'll also do work in shielding the amount of spill of light from the project. We are very conscious of the dark sky issue. We want to be good stewards of that. And we don't see any decorative lighting or highlighting from a lighting point of view, only that lighting that's required for the functioning of the building. And even that will be shielded once again by these large overhangs. So with that, let Tom make some closing remarks.
Thank you, Mark. So I think that when you step back and you think about what you've seen so far this evening, we've really looked at it from 3 very different vantage points. The first being the view of the community. What were the major concerns, and making certain that we were very focused in trying to address those. And I think that I know that the Technical Advisory Committee has been enormously helpful in helping us navigate through those issues and providing some solid feedback as we've advanced the plan that you've seen this evening. The building height, in fact, even the scale of the project has been refined over time. So in fact, the building is around 100,000 square feet smaller than what we had originally anticipated a little over a year ago as we've continued to refine the planning. We've also made considerable advances in dropping the structure while maintaining patient safety and flow in the building. Northwestern's also been as focused on the landscaping and also leveraging the landscaping. The fact that we've already had a health and fitness center on the campus for 20 years is the first advance in really creating what we believe is a destination for health and wellness. the opportunity for us to leverage 160 acres, a beautiful campus, and stitch it nicely together with not only the existing campus, but the assets that exist on both sides of our hospital, stitching together the health and fitness and the other campus partners nicely in a complementary way, and engaging the community from walking trails to biking trails to the commons area, where we could provide a variety of elements, much like the high school leverages the field in front of it. Also design it in a way where it is very intuitive, and I think it's really brilliant the way our architects have leveraged the need for the detention basin and working nicely with that so that it really creates a very unique aspect that, quite frankly, I don't think you'd see in any other hospital. And finally, when you stitch it all again together, my favorite word this evening, it really is a spectacular project from my perspective. And I hope you see that too. So with that, I know that there are likely some questions, and I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we get to those questions, Tom, I'd like to have Augie Ziccarelli, who has been a member of the Technical Advisory Committee, give a presentation, an update of the commission, and those of you who are here, what has been occurring. Okay.
Well, thank you, Mike. I'm fortunate enough to be one member of a 9-member committee selected by the city manager to form the Hospital Advisory Committee. The purpose of our committee is to provide construction feedback during the design period, and also to provide a systems of checks and balances as things are being designed to check against the master plan that was pre-approved. We've done that through questions, challenges, maybe a little bit of criticism. We come from a very diverse group. The group includes architects, developers, builders, mechanical engineers, representatives from open land, former congresswoman, landscape architect. I have found that the questions, challenges, and criticisms have been met with a great deal of responsiveness from this design team. So far, we've had 8 meetings. Each meeting typically consists of 3 hours. There's an hour and a half where we're all together and the design team is presenting their new plans, new ideas, refinements to other plans that they had shown to us previously. The second half of that 3-hour meeting, the design team would leave, and it would be our 9 members talking to each other, trying to mull over what we had just been presented, and putting our thoughts together, presenting them to Kathy so that they could be fed back to the design team prior to the next meeting. To give you some idea of our sensitivity to the items, it's very difficult to start talking about some of these items, especially with some of our backgrounds, without them getting very granular in nature. But to give you an idea of some of the topics that we've talked about, and none of these have been 5-minute discussions. As a matter of fact, some have gone over 2 or 3 meetings with the same topic. But some of the topics would range from exterior lighting, drainage, wetlands and wetland mitigation, environmental impact, traffic flow in the surrounding neighborhoods, walking distances on campus, the impact on neighborhoods, traffic flow within the campus, drop-off and pickup, knowing that that's an important part of the hospital, noise, overall grade change of finished floor as compared to the surrounding grade, HVAC equipment, sight lines, as Mark had just said, from all different directions, future expansion, where's it going to go, and the development of a system of walking trails and bike paths. All of these, and I'm probably missing some, have been points of discussion that have been thoroughly discussed and responded to. The tenor of the meetings has always been, in my opinion, productive and very respectful of the job that they're doing, and in turn, they've been very respectful of the committee members' questions. Carol, one of the design team members from the hospital, once said during the course of a meeting that the whole objective of this design was not to have people visit the hospital only when they're sick, but when they're healthy, to keep them healthy. So as we're looking at some of these elements in the site plan, keep that in mind, that that's the objective of this hospital plan. Route 41, as Tom said, has already started. That is a condition, I believe, of the master plan. So they're not only designing, but acting within accordance with the master plan. Our group still has some work to do. I believe we're going to meet at least 2 or 3 more times talking about exterior elements of the building, which is not part of the presentation tonight. I can't speak for the entire committee, but I can speak for myself, and I work with architects and developers every day. Very proud of what the group has put together so far and what they're presenting to you tonight. And that concludes my comments, Mike.
Thank you very much, Augie. In terms of deciding where we go next year with a meeting, how many are public citizens who are here who wish to testify or comment? Okay, so there are 5 or 6 of you. We could either allow testimony first and then have questions. Let's do that. For those of you who are going to testify, could you please stand? I want to swear you in. Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you're about to give or have previously given is true and correct to the best of your knowledge? Thank you very much. Okay, you can decide who would like to come first. When you should come on up, please give your name and address. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael Beecham, and I reside at 630 Meadowood Drive in Lake Forest. I really have a question, and I'm hoping that maybe I can get a yes or no answer right away, and if I can't, then I'll just make a brief statement. My question is there a traffic light envisioned at the southern access road off of Waukegan Road? And my hope would be no.
I'm seeing heads being nodded negative.
No traffic light. So it's enter from the south, exit to the north. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please come up.
My name is Rob Rourke. I live at 1130 Emmons Court in Lake Forest, which is in the Middle Fork Farms neighborhood. Firstly, thank you for the presentation. It was the first time that I've had that amount of detail, which I know, Tom, you pointed out that there's been a great deal of engagement with the community that is potentially impacted by it. I haven't had any engagement, but I'm delighted to participate tonight. I look at this and say, this is a very thoughtful plan, and I think the collective actions of the architects, the designers, and the council members are resulting in this, and I think that's wonderful. But I also can't help but notice that there's an overwhelming amount of consideration that's been given to how the neighbors will be affected, which is great. But the fact that that consideration has been given is a tacit acknowledgement that the neighbors will be affected. So then the question becomes one of, how do the neighbors get compensated if there is any sort of impact? Because clearly we wouldn't go to such lengths to build 60-foot berms or whatever they are to isolate us from noise and light and traffic pollution if there wasn't some sort of real impact. And I would argue, I'd have no evidence, but I would think the actions speak to some evidence of it, that there's a monetary effect. What is it? Who knows? I don't know, nobody knows. But I think there's a way to protect the neighbors from the monetary effect. Because if, for example, my neighborhood, Middle Fork Farms, were to not appreciate over the next 10 years because people had anxiety moving into the neighborhood because of traffic patterns and noise pollution and light pollution, and therefore it under-indexed the relative appreciation of all of Lake Forest, who bears that risk? Northwestern doesn't bear that risk. The town bears a little bit because the tax proceeds coming out of Lake Forest, that neighborhood, would be less relative to the appreciation of others. But the homeowners bear that risk. Probably 98% of that risk. So what I would ask some consideration to be given to is the idea of setting up some sort of an escrow fund that says, look, if the average home, not just in Middle Fork, but pick some surrounding communities, pick a number. If the average home is worth $800,000 and it appreciates over the next decade at 2%, whereas all of Lake Forest appreciates over the next decade at 3%, that 1 point delta is paid by the hospital back to the homeowners per year. And it would be a very simple calculation. You could get appraisers to do it at the beginning, you could get appraisers to do it at the end, and maybe it's a $20 million exposure. But it's better that it comes out of the person, the organization that's getting the benefit of the build, which is the hospital, and it certainly is a lot easier for them to absorb than a series of neighbors who frankly would have to take it on their own hide. So my observation would be, or a question or a suggestion, is has there been any consideration to anything like that? Because I think it could be very easily structured. And if there's not, are we just tacitly saying we're going to ignore it? Because the evidence tonight is it's an area of concern. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Next person to testify, please come on.
I don't really need a microphone.
Please do, because the meeting is being televised, and we want to make sure that we hear you through the public address system.
Happen to be, if you all have this map, we happen to be, I see our cottage at Lake Forest Place. And it is.
Ma'am, could you identify yourself, please?
Oh,
And then
hi.
if you would, pull the microphone down closer.
All right.
There we go.
My name is Helen Hall. We live at 908 Barclay Circle at Lake Forest Place. And we've only been there 3 years, so we're not old timers there. But our cottage happens to be on this map. And that makes me a little nervous because it says a 75-foot setback right into the backyard of the people that live across the street from us. And I'd like an explanation as to what that means, because who owns that property then? It's going right into the backyard of the people that live right across the street from us, and sort of into our view and our yard. What does that mean? And another question I have is, we went to the meeting the other day over at Lake Forest Hospital, and that was very informative, and I walked away feeling better than looking at this map, because they said that the buildings were going to be 3 stories, and the one facing Lake Forest Place was only to be 2 stories. Now, I don't know whether that's correct or not. But anyway, it's sort of, it might seem like a simple concern to you, but if you live there and you're trying to get out of the road, or you're driving in and out every day and such, it's a major concern.
Thank you very much. Kathy, can you address the question that she raised?
Actually, I was going to ask maybe Mark or Tom if you could put up a site plan and review that location of the 75-foot setback, which is on the hospital side of Westmoreland Road.
No, it's not. That's not the picture.
So this is the buffer in question? Yeah.
Okay. You see those little cottages up in the upper left-hand corner?
He's right there.
Well, the site plan that I have in my hand has the 75-foot setback on our side of the road.
I believe there is an existing 75-foot setback from the road to the cottages, but the land on the north side of Westmoreland does belong to Presbyterian Homes. But there will be an additional setback of 75 feet on the hospital side of Westmoreland.
Correct. And just to clarify, the setback is a no building setback. Nothing can go in to that setback area. Sure.
Hi, Carol Childs with the hospital. I want to acknowledge the comment of this woman. When we had our community open house, one of your neighbors noticed that we had a typo on the exhibit, and I think that's what she has in hand. We've since corrected that setback to be as Ms. Zerniak described, which is 75 feet south of Westmoreland into our property line. We do not impact the property on the north side of Westmoreland.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay, I think we have at least one or two more people to testify.
My name is Bill Ray. I live at 917 Barclay Circle, right near the halls, except my cottage backs up onto Westmoreland Drive. I have several concerns. I voiced them in an email I sent to the Plan Commission. I presume you got it. I only sent it on Monday evening, so it's possible you didn't. If you,
I don't believe that got to the Plan Commission, but I will
Okay.
see that they get it before they take action.
well, I'd like to roughly review what it said because we're here tonight. But one or two comments about the hospital presentation. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
I heard them say several times they're very sensitive to the neighbors to the west and the south. We're on the north, and they have not shown, to my regard, much sensitivity. We have a 75-foot setback. We have 370 adult residents who live there, which is larger, I think, than the residential area south of the hospital, all the way down to Deerpath. On the other side of Waukegan, I would not venture a guess. Nevertheless, the 370 people are all adults. They all, well, no, that's not true. Many of them drive. I think no one has thought about Lake Forest Place, and maybe Lake Forest Place is at fault. That maybe they should have reminded you. I did send material in 2012 to the Plan Commission. I spoke once, my wife spoke once. Anything we had said, except for the height of the building, the 90-foot plus height at that time, was responded to. Let me just extract from my email what I said. At that time, I went to the neighborhood meeting too at the hospital on October 3rd. All we had was that one simple diagram right there. No information as to building heights, density, whatever. I was told, but that's immaterial, it was 42 to 45 feet high, which I thought, my goodness, that's wonderful. I still think what they're doing is wonderful. I have no criticism of that. But the 75-foot setback, when you compare that with the setbacks for all the residential areas, you have 250 feet, as you know, along Waukegan Road. You have 200 feet along the north side of that subdivision, and you have 120 feet to the east for the rest of that subdivision. We have 75. And when the diagram was presented to us at that neighborhood meeting, the 75-foot was drawn as if it included the road. So you subtract 30 feet from that, and we were really concerned. And that's what I thought when I came here, although I was told by two hospital representatives that that was a mistake and it would be corrected. Two others had told me earlier it wasn't a mistake. The hospital owned the road, and that's what it was. So I'm glad that was clarified tonight. My major concern is that access road that I heard described tonight as the entrance now to the hospital. The one off Westmoreland Road that doesn't exist as you come in from Waukegan, probably I would guess 175 yards from Waukegan. If it's a two-way road as it's planned, anyone leaving that road and going north in the evening, particularly in the winter when the density of the leaves and the trees is, you can see through them. Those headlights from those cars are going to be shining on the rear of those cottages. Now, we have a berm on our side of the road. It's not high enough to protect. The berm probably hits maybe 6 feet above floor level. I mean, something like that. We don't have that protection. I think the buffer for Lake Forest Place should be at least as great as the buffer for any other residential area. I won't pursue that anymore because I know your time is valuable. But the other point is that access road, other than the 75-foot setback, the access road will bring a lot more traffic, no question about it, because you got all the people escaping from the hospital who don't want to go to 41 and want to go north. And there's only about a 200-yard separation, I think, from the major entrance to Lake Forest Place, which is called Pembridge Drive, and Waukegan. Already it's difficult to pull out sometimes because people drive quite fast on Westmoreland Road. If you have another road inserted in that short 200-yard, I'm just guessing, I didn't go measure it, you've got a lot more congestion. You have people wanting to turn left. I would think the great majority to get onto Waukegan, trying to turn across Westmoreland. It's a real problem. And when you stop to think about the 370 residents we have in our community, they're all elderly. They don't have the driving skills of a 40-year-old. I don't know what the average age is, but I'm 82, and I would guess that I'm in the youngest 20% of the people there. So just visualize people that age trying to get out to Waukegan to go up to Dominic's or wherever they might be going, and all this new traffic coming in. I made 2 suggestions that I sent to you. One was to make that entrance one way only, coming into the hospital, so that no one could go out that way. That would eliminate all the lighting of, that I'm concerned about. It would also eliminate a lot of traffic coming out there and turning, trying to turn across the traffic to get east, to get west. Or, if that wasn't satisfactory, to move that access road to where it comes in at the end of Lake Forest Place, which is just about the entrance of the fitness center. At least the traffic would be straightened out and wouldn't be forcing its way into Westmoreland Road, where it's very close to Waukegan, and they could go either way. So I know it's late in the game, but these are things that can be done easily now, and if we wait, it's going to be much more difficult.
Could you wind up your remarks, please?
I certainly will, and I'll stop right there. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. We appreciate your testimony, and just to comment, it is not too late. Your comments are timely. This will not be decided by the Plan Commission or the City Council for at least 2 or 3 months. Thank you. So your comments will be taken into account, I assure you.
Good evening. I'm Melissa Knorr. I'm at 910 Lane, Lorraine. So I have a few questions. I heard one thing that concerned me a little bit, and I'd like to raise a question about the traffic that is going to be carried on the road to the south end of the property. What I heard indicated was that this traffic is going to be emergency vehicles and trucking for supplies, in addition to regular vehicular traffic. what's not clear to me, and I unfortunately could not attend the meeting last week, it's not clear to me where the emergency room will be and what type of lighting is going to be associated with that entrance. And my frame of reference for that lighting is lighting at Condell Hospital, I think it has a new name now, at their entrance, which is quite frankly an assault on the eye. When you drive up to that building, it is just so harsh. And so if the emergency room is located towards the Lane Lorraine properties, towards Building 100, I'd be concerned if there's that type of intense lighting facing the properties to the south. I appreciate the attention to light spillover from the buildings. An area of concern that we'd just like to express, my husband had the opportunity to meet with a Ms. Hahn. She's with HPG Group and apparently has been consulting on the lighting for the parking lots. Our house sits at a high level. 2 years ago, we submitted pictures of what we see through the conservation area on the south side when all the leaf growth on the deciduous trees in there have dropped off. With the existing berm, we see from the backyard at its lowest level, we see directly over the berm. And I'd be happy to provide those pictures again. I did try to send them to Ms. Hahn and to Kathy again today, just as a reference. And so when we're in our living room, we're at a higher elevation on the property. We can definitely see over the berm at that point. I understand the new berm will be at a 25-foot level, but when we go to our second floor, 3 of our bedrooms face the backyard. And so that brings us up to a higher level where we want to make sure that there's adequate landscaping of deciduous trees to year-round provide us with a block from lights, not only from the hospital, but more importantly from all of the parking lots that are going to be on the west side of that property. Ms. Hahn talked about 18-foot high lights. With a 25-foot berm and the slope of the property, we're concerned, and the height of our home on top of that, we're quite concerned that we are still going to have a lighting issue. And so we would just like the planning committee and the group that you're working on to be mindful of that part of the planning so that we can continue to enjoy the dark community, which is one of the reasons that brought us to Lake Forest. And I believe I heard tonight that the conservancy area to the south side of the berm is going to stay intact, and that would be our preference, is to keep that area intact and then augment the berm that exists today. And again, landscape that with non-deciduous plantings as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Can someone from the hospital comment on her first question, and that was what the lighting will be at that entrance where emergency vehicles apparently come in?
Let me try to answer that. Once again, Mark Shoemaker. First of all, your other part of your question was where is the emergency room and the entrance? First of all, that will be underneath this last pavilion. The actual entrance into the emergency department will have its own separate door. The ambulances will actually go into an ambulance garage. They won't be outside. So, you know, the light will be contained and specific to that function. And so we don't expect a lot of spill from that. And it's not like it's an ambulance yard where vehicles line up. So purposely so, it's a contained element. And the entrance for the emergency is a smaller version of this entrance that I showed you. It will have a glass front and a clear front door, but it also has a large overhang, and it's composed in much the same vocabulary. Does that answer your question?
Very good. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify? Okay, seeing none, we'll close that part of the meeting. At this point, I would turn it over to questions from members of the commission to either the hospital, Kathy, what have you. Who would like to start? Guy?
Well, that was a very good presentation. I have a question that isn't, I think, too detailed as far as architecture goes, but it has to do with the pavilion spoke of before, the one that is furthest to the north. And I think on the model, is that the one that's represented closest to myself? Is this at 1.5 story? Is this a lower roof, and is it permanently so? Could you talk a little bit about that? I didn't see it in the packet, man. I was wondering what
It's actually, it's 2 stories. You know, it's the podium and 1 level above that, forming that particular pavilion. And that is the clinic end of the project. And from a phase 1 programmatic point of view, that's all the space we need currently on that end.
Is it anticipated that it might actually increase in height?
Yes, it will be designed in order to add 1 more level to be equal to the other pavilions.
And the road that leads along there now, Westmoreland, that's really the closest point to any part of the hospital, that particular area there, isn't it?
Correct.
Had you given any thought to trying to maintain that lower height as just sort of a nice introductory bump to the rest of the composition?
Well, what you'll see as we get into a more detailed architectural discussion in the future, that corner of the building is being articulated differently architecturally, not unlike what you're starting to see on the lakeside, recognizing that that's a very special corner to the project and will be somewhat of a gateway expression, if you will, as you come off of Westmoreland, either from Westmoreland directly or from the exit. So we're sensitive to that being an important architectural corner. But we have no fear about this going to 1 more story. We think overall the 3-story building with the types of architectural expression we're talking about will continue to feel very well scaled and appropriate to the site. And we feel we have enough room there that it won't feel crowded or infringe on the clarity of the roadscape and the movement into the center of the site.
Is that something that the advisory committee will continue to see development of?
I'm sure they will.
Okay, so is it possible that that could be an issue that you kind of address, just so that it doesn't become one later on? That was one issue about the composition that I was concerned about, is that would that kind of spoil the whole delicacy of it, to have that end part where you have the confluence of the exiting or entry traffic from 41 bearing down on that part, and also the rather bucolic and pastoral ring road of Westmoreland then kind of skimming close to that larger structure. I think that's a real point to make a convincing argument that the height won't be a factor, because I think that might be the one weak link I see in this otherwise very graceful diagram at any rate.
Okay. I would point out also we anticipate, as Tom mentioned, the idea of there is a green buffer, if you will, of our own along Westmoreland there that frames the water feature as well as the building at that intersection. That'll also, I think, mediate that kind of concern, if there is any.
You know, maybe I'll have one more thought for you
Sure.
and before I stop. I appreciate the model that you brought, and I'd like to go take a closer look at it later, but I don't want to become myopic about it. But would it be possible perhaps to maybe have a model, and not something particularly involved, but one of the entire site with some kind of a representation of the other buildings, the health club, and maybe it could be even in the form of some foam core things, just to give us a handle on scale, and also the buildings of the cottages, and more importantly, that larger facility that Presbyterian Homes operates.
Okay.
And maybe even the existing hospital, just so we can get a little bit of a scale referential to these pavilions that you've shown us tonight. It might be helpful so that people understand what they're really kind of going to appreciate there.
Very good.
Okay, thank you.
I had a couple of questions. I'm just kind of curious. We've talked about we have 5 buildings here, as well as a atrium entranceway. Can you just describe what's in the other? We've talked about the clinic. We've talked about the emergency room building. Just kind of describe why there are 5 buildings, and why and how they're distributed in this design.
Well, what you're looking at, let's start with the plan. starting from the north, these
Right.
two pavilions are both clinic buildings,
What does clinic mean? Is that, that's,
outpatient facilities.
okay, so that's different than outpatient?
No patient rooms in those
Okay,
in those
all right.
pavilions. And then in the centroid, if you will, of the composition, that is the entrance. And that entrance is to serve both the ambulatory care and the inpatient care part of the diagram. There will be a secondary entrance here for the clinic, but this is really the front door. And the idea is, as I showed you, the idea of a sort of central hall. It's really not an atrium. It's just a little bit higher space that creates this hall from the front door back to the lakeside. So once again, we've got that connectivity to the water, and that will link up with a circulation spine that runs on the inside of that arc. And that circulation looks out at the water and the site. And then as you move south, these 1, 2, 3 pavilions are the inpatient bed pavilions above the podium. The podium is filled with diagnostic and testing. That's where the operational rooms are, and all those kinds of sort of back of house, if you will, type functions that then are served by elevators to each one of the bed towers. So the bed towers are positioned all on top of all those very functional elements for direct access for patient care. And then at the, as we were describing before,
Sorry, but the podium,
yes,
the way you described that, is 1 story? Or
it's 1 story.
1 story, okay.
And I think it's best shown if you have a chance to take a closer look
Right.
at the model.
Understand.
So, your experience of this project will be, really a 1-story element with a series of pavilions sitting on top of it. And then lastly, at the southern end, as I was describing earlier, that is where the emergency entrance is. It's a smaller entry, but similar in character to this, to kind of punctuate the southern end, and is linked directly to the emergency department.
Okay. That's helpful, thank you. And an interesting design. So my other question, and I know we talked about this, but I just needed to get some clarity. Maybe this is Kathy, maybe it's the folks from the hospital. Explain to me again what's happening with the road and the berm or barrier between the cottages at Lake Forest Place. I mean, we said there's a typo, but is there in fact going to be 75 feet north of the road? Or 75 feet with the road? I'm sorry, just go through that again, please.
Mark, maybe as I talk, you could use the laser. Thank you. Westmoreland Road is privately owned by the hospital. It's not a public road. And the width of that road is 30 feet,
Yep.
I believe. To the north of Westmoreland Road is property owned by Presbyterian
Right.
Homes. From Westmoreland Road to the cottages is a 75-foot setback. That exists, that's on Presbyterian Homes property. From the north edge of the road, across the road 30 feet, and then 75 feet on the south side of the road, that will be the distance. So it's the 75-foot setback on the north side of the road, plus the 30 feet of the road. That is the full setback distance from the Presbyterian Homes property line. Did that clarify, or did that confuse?
And now I'm more, no. So there actually is 75 feet between the
Yes.
road?
Westmoreland Road is 30 feet. There is a 75-foot setback in place on the north side, and a 75-foot setback is proposed on the south side.
Okay. Totaling 180 feet.
So 75, 75, 30.
30, yes. Right.
And is the road, as depicted on the proposed map, the location of where Westmoreland Road runs today? So that's totally unchanged?
Correct.
Okay.
Can I clarify one other point? The clinic that was referenced in the master plan, the term medical office building was used, so I just want to be clear. Those 2 northern pavilions are what originally was thought of would be a separate standalone building, another mass. So those pavilions are the medical office building.
Okay.
Thank you. Lloyd?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of questions. The access road that's south of Westmoreland off of Waukegan, that's a new road, is that correct? Will there be a light at that intersection? None is anticipated. So how do you figure the traffic will flow in and out of that road as it relates to the traffic off of Westmoreland and the connector?
So in response to the to the request by the city, the intent was to drive as much of the access off to the north. So if you look to the far right, you can see the new access road off of 41. That will to decant. I think we had anticipated that there could be a potential relief on Deerpath to the tune of around 25% as a result of that improvement alone. Adding the southern access will allow for more convenient access for staff who are accessing the campus from the south. So today, off of Waukegan, you can also see, as a result of those two access points, a reduction in the utilization of the northern Waukegan Road entry point. I also think that it's worth pointing out that with those two enhancements, it will also reduce the amount of traffic in front of Lake Forest Place, because patients or staff that are accessing the facility from the north coming down to 45 will come straight into the ring road, thereby, not needing to go north. And then if you're coming from the south, the more expedient access would be coming off the southern access point. So we do believe that the amount of traffic will significantly be reduced actually in front of Lake Forest Place, which will be a nice enhancement to the residents there.
Has there been any discussion, and Augie, you can chime in here as well, has there been any discussion about using Westmoreland and the connector as in only and the access road as out only or something like that to address Mr. Brady's comments?
We do know that that once you introduce some confusion as to one way only onto the campus, especially with patients, and some have never presenting to the campus before, could pose some safety issues. But I do believe that the intent would be to really just balance the overall demand to the north. I think we've effectively done that. We've also tried to create a convenient way for getting staff in and out in an expedient way so that they're not navigating through the property. Those were the goals that have been advanced so far.
So the expectation is the access road would be primarily for staff, and Westmoreland and the connector primarily for hospital patrons?
Correct.
Okay. I'd like to ask Mr. Shoemaker about his statement about managing light spill. I wonder if you could just elaborate on, especially as it pertains to a couple of comments we've heard this evening. Parking lot lighting, nighttime lighting, and how you, it's a nice phrase, but how do you actually do it? Manage the spill.
Well, first of all, going back to the slide in which I said that, the idea is, the definition of dark skies is to try to contain any light spill to the area above a building. And so in this expression that we've gravitated to architecturally, that, as I mentioned too, we're using as sun screening, it has this dual use that we kept in mind as we developed the architectural articulation you see here. So, and this is the more, I should say, the more public, the more lit side of the building, frankly, which is facing the highway. So that's also purposeful in terms of the way we plan this thing. So it's focused towards the lake, towards the 41 corridor. So it's not facing any of the neighborhoods to the south, the north, or the west. And with these overhangs, any more public spaces, such as the circulation spine, will be shielded by these overhangs and containing the light. Now, there'll always be some light spill as long as there's a light bulb on or a light fixture on in the building, but the idea is to minimize that and dampen that as much as possible. And we're trying to do that as also in the parking areas by using shielding with the fixtures that we're using, trying to get them as low as possible, but we have safety issues and we have security issues that we have to contend with. But finding fixtures that are shielded so that the bright spot of the fixture is not shining into anybody's eyes either as they approach the property or from a distance. But at the same time, getting the light that's necessary on the pavement itself. So that's the intent.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr.
Jeff?
Well, I'd just start by commending Mr. McAfee and his team and Mr. Shoemaker and Oslin for a great presentation. I think what we've seen here tonight is a dramatic improvement over what could have been submitted as part of a previously acceptable master plan environment. So thank you for your efforts, and I have no further questions.
Okay.
Maybe just one thing to follow up on what Lloyd had said, and I think what some of the neighbors asked. I know Mark, part of the electrical site lighting design is a photometric plan, which helps space the fixtures. Could we see, when you come for approval, the photometric plan that would show foot candles at the property line, et cetera, as part of that submittal package, being that you're doing it anyway, I would assume? Thank you.
In closing, I just have one final question, and that is, in your further detailed design of the property, have you come across or identified any traffic-related modifications in terms of the traffic counts in the study that were attached to the special use permit? Has anything jumped out at you in terms of how traffic may be modified, either lower traffic or higher traffic at any of those intersection points, or traffic volumes? And if so, where are they?
Certainly our traffic consultant has been engaged throughout the process, and in fact, the introduction of the access road is this a laser? Yep.
Right.
Oh, no. Yes. Nope. To the north. To the one that goes to the Commons. That road right there was viewed as necessary in order to not overload the interchange off of Waukegan. So driving, off of Westmoreland. So by installing that, which we also felt played out nicely with driving traffic straight to the front door, so minimizing the confusion for patients or visitors that are presenting to the campus, actually optimized the plan and balanced the load appropriately across the site. So in fact, I think that with the installation of the access points as suggested by the city, we don't seem to have any concerns whatsoever.
Okay. So that's, at least on what was presented, that's called a connector road, correct?
Correct.
Okay, the access road is down further south. That would be largely used
Correct.
by emergency vehicles?
A combination. If you're heading from the south as an employee or a physician, you would likely access that because it's a straight shot to staff parking to the south side of the structure, but would also be available for ambulances or other supply vehicles, that type of thing as well, if that was viewed as the most expedient.
So ambulances coming from the south would, the preferred route would be along what is called the
Correct,
access
because
drive.
it drops straight down into the emergency area of the campus.
So that's a yes?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
May I follow up on that?
Sure.
Just traffic coming from the north and exiting off of 41, staff in particular, what would their traffic route be to their parking areas?
So staff heading south, accessing the road, can come straight around the circulation road and into staff parking, or if they're designated to park to the south side of the campus or to the surface lot on the southern portion, would make a left and head down and pop into the appropriate designated lot for the individual. So we'll have controlled access on the campus as we do today with card access. So if your first shift, you may be directed to park in a more distant lot than second shift and that type.
And likewise, how about northbound 41 traffic?
So northbound 41 will continue to exit off of Deerpath and enter the site as they have in the past.
At Westmoreland?
Or in all likelihood, consider moving on Waukegan as a result, thereby helping, hopefully decanting a bit more off of the Deerpath access point.
Good, thank you.
Is that something that you might actually work out internally with staff if you find traffic patterns?
Absolutely, absolutely. We want to make sure we have a safe.
I had one more item, and this was actually to Augie. Augie, some of the comments we heard tonight from the local residents, are those comments that you are going to plan on taking to your next advisory committee meeting and discussing with the group as far as their viability for possible implementation? I mean, just are they?
Yes, I've made a list of them, specifically the lighting, which seems to be, as I'm looking to the north, and maybe the hospital could best express this, because I think it's been talked about, but maybe not clearly indicated. If there's another pavilion to be added someday, my understanding is that's going to the south, not towards Lake Forest Place. So, as I look at that 75-foot setback, I say to myself, it's 75 feet, but really what's going to go there? That's not the direction the hospital is moving, at least what we're being told. They're being moved to the south to kind of fan out to the south another pavilion. So, I think that's somewhat been discussed already, for the concerns about Lake Forest Place and so forth. So yes, I've made a list of the items and we'll follow up with those.
Okay. Any concluding comments by commissioners, either in terms of further direction they would like to give to Augie or to staff, or words of wisdom to the hospital as it proceeds to complete? My understanding is that you will come back to us in December. Is that correct? Will that likely be, in your view, the final package? Okay. So now is the time. I would hope, Augie, too, that what we heard in the public testimony will be fed into the technical advisory committee's deliberations as well.
Yes, photometrics, for example, I think addresses a couple of the comments.
And is the gentleman who spoke second here, who talked about an escrow fund?
He left.
He's left.
Okay, he left. Okay. Okay.
That one is probably not part of our discussion.
I understand.
Right.
I understand, but it's, Kathy, if you have his name and address, maybe we could ask him for clarification of what he's talking about. I think I followed what he was suggesting, but it would be, in my view, clearly breaking new ground that my own perception as a financial person would be very challenging at best to try to come to terms with all of the what-if scenarios. But you might want to be in touch with him to see whether he's got anything further so that we can get further clarification of what he's really talking about.
I will make a contact. I also wanted to affirm that I will work with Augie to make sure that all of the comments, both your comments and those of the neighbors, are forwarded to the advisory committee. And in particular, there was a question raised about headlights, and we will work with the hospital project team to do some study of that and really look at where the headlights will shine and how that can be mitigated. So we will look at that among the other issues.
Okay. Okay. No further comments or discussions on this. We'll consider this part of the agenda completed for now. Is there any public testimony on non-agenda items? Okay, seeing none. Additional comments from staff, Kathy?
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay. Very good. Well, thank you all for attending this evening. Appreciate your input and your comments, and we'll look forward to addressing some of the concerns that were expressed by the public here tonight, plus further development of your final plan. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
I hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor, say aye. Any opposition? Seeing none, meeting is adjourned.
Because of the way it's.
I think it's fantastic. Because if you had a central so much better.